All right. Good morning and welcome to WACIF's first Sustainable Growth Series webinar of 2026. We are really excited to have a special presenter for you today, Miss Cassandra St. Her. I'm working on it, Cassandra. We are still really excited that you're here. Cassandra has a myriad of experiences crossing industries or disciplines such as corporate law, brand strategy, content development, shaped by international travel and cross-cultural storytelling. Today, she applies that background to sustainability and telling sustainability marketing stories. So, with that, I pass it on to Cassandra to lead us through our discussion today.
Great. Thank you so much, Geneva. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on storytelling techniques for your sustainability practices in your business. And we're going to go over a bunch of things today, but all in all, I think you'll be able to walk away with a few memorable tips for improving your storytelling as you interact with and appeal to your customers and your potential partners. So for some background, WACIF's Sustainable DC project is a way to jumpstart your work in this space because it guides and equips new entrepreneurs and businesses looking to incorporate sustainability practices with the tools and support to do so at a high level. It's all working to make sure that you're on solid ground as you participate in an area of the market that has a lot of growth, a lot of movement, there's plenty of interest, and a lot of talk around it. So this component of the project makes it so that when you represent yourself in these spaces, you're doing so articulately and with clarity. Because yes, you're doing great work. Yes, you care about these green practices, but how are we telling people about those decisions and about those principles and those values that you hold and your business holds, the ones that drove you here in the first place? Because we definitely know that you certainly could have organized your business to not prioritize sustainability at all, and that probably would have been the easier way to run your business. So we want to know why you care, and maybe that'll help make your customers want to care as well. So to tell you more about who I am, through my brand strategy consultancy, Clarified Creative, I help founders and organizations structure their messaging frameworks around their target audience groups. So this foundation building is so important, especially before those companies plan to scale. And a key way that I do that is I try to pinpoint what the business owner running the brand does naturally and authentically, and then we build off of that. So I think it's important to tailor your writing and your messaging to who you naturally are and how you naturally speak and to what genuinely interests you, because that is what is most sustainable in your brand strategy. So I formerly practiced corporate law, and while preparing for a transaction, you're always preparing for what the other side will say or do. You anticipate it and you include things in what you're saying now so that it preempts what they will likely say, what the other side will likely say in return. And so this mindset runs through my approach to this work. And generally, I enjoy helping people think about things differently, in a way that makes something that previously seemed complex now seems simple and clear. And so that is what this webinar aims to do. So let's touch on a specific point within the growing sustainability market. Very recent research, September 2025 research from NYU Stern's Center for Sustainable Business, shows that verified sustainability messaging can lift brand appeal by up to 23%, reinforcing the idea that clarity of the impact that you create through your sustainability practices directly influences market performance. So just adding one or two social impact messages to existing product messaging can increase your appeal. So that would be like simply incorporating info about how the product or how purchasing the product will also, for example, provide disaster relief or help alleviate food insecurity. So the focus is about the clarity of the impact that you're making and being clear about how your product makes an impact and why it matters. So this is a word I'll be focusing on a lot, which is why. Um, why are you doing this? Why did you choose this practice, this sustainable practice, or that sustainable practice? Why do you care? Why does this matter to you? Why should your customers care? Why should the community care about what you're doing? Why should the leaders around you care about what you're doing? This will be a driving force behind your storytelling. And you should let it run in the background as you're making your messaging decisions, constantly asking yourself, why, what can I say more? How can I say more? How can I describe more about my choices? How can I respond to someone asking me why? So back to this slide, we've learned that we've already learned that adding messaging about sustainability efforts boosts the appeal of our products. And now we know that we need to ask ourselves why, so that when we're crafting our messaging, it's done with sincerity. So where will we need to worry about communicating this impact from our sustainable practices? That would be with everyone. We talk to everyone and everywhere, essentially. All right, so here you are in the middle. You're doing important sustainability initiatives. It could be you're switching from plastic to compostable or refillable packaging. You could be choosing between local or regional suppliers, more local suppliers instead of long distance shipping. You could be reducing your water, energy, or production waste in day-to-day operations. It could be anything. And all these green arrows, the green arrows show all the communicating that you need to do to fully express the value of those initiatives that you're doing. So we're about to go over something that will apply no matter how things are trending in the space, because it taps into the principles of copywriting and brand messaging. Okay, so here you are. When you want to talk to potential or current customers, you want to tell them, you want to craft your messaging in a way that tells them how your initiatives benefit them. When you talk to your suppliers or other types of vendor up partners, you want to tell them how your sustainable practices will benefit them. So it could be any type of partner, retail, distribution partners, industry peers, collaborators. It could be local media, storytelling channels, certification standards, bodies, um, even local sustainability networks. It doesn't matter who it is. The idea behind your messaging is that you don't just go on and on about what you do and how great it is and how noble you are for doing it. You tell your prospect how what you do, what you offer benefits them. So now we'll get into how to navigate this. Businesses involved with the Sustainable DC project can be in very different stages of their sustainability practices. You may be in earlier stages where you're still deciding which practices to incorporate into your business. You may be thinking about your carbon footprint or whether local sourcing or packaging changes or waste reduction is the right place to start for your business model. You may have already chosen and implemented your practices, but are having some difficulty with showing your customers the value of those practices and why you're the best option among the competition because you've chosen to do them. You may be having challenges showing partners why your approach supports their initiatives. And you may be having challenges expressing why your initiatives are most effective in your community and thus deserving of that particular grant or public funding opportunity. Nevertheless, whatever stage it might be, foundational messaging techniques apply at any stage. So here's the framework that we'll be using going forward. Our four-step framework for effective sustainability messaging. It has two major parts. So it's data collecting and storytelling. Under data collecting, we have our first step, which is to identify the practice, which is essentially just pinpointing the right action, the right sustainable practice for you. Second is to translate those actions into impact. And third is to gather the proof, which is to convincingly document the data. Then under storytelling, we have step four, which is to adapt the story for whichever audience you're focused on. So data collecting. I have a little picture here to help illustrate the idea, but essentially you want to gather data to give yourself and others enough to work with. So that's hard numbers, that's descriptions, that's detail around what you're doing so that there are enough ingredients to make a strong story. So obviously with the empty plate, there's not enough to work with, not enough to build off from. So the data, the strong points, strong descriptions and detail will give us what we need. So to identify the practice, you're going to want to identify one real sustainability action already happening in your business. You want to avoid vague nice to haves or future oriented messaging that implies that essentially you're not yet actually doing that work. It should be concrete, observable, ideally quantifiable. To help pinpoint what that action should be or already is, you can think about your operations, your current operations, the components of your supply chain, where your ingredients come from, your packaging, how much waste you produce, your utilities use, any charitable giving that you may already be doing, or just in general, how you participate in your surrounding community, how your business participates in the community. When you start to break down these elements, you can see entry points for making an action more eco-friendly. And so we'll start a running example to use across the steps, and it'll apply for a local bakery. So let's say the local bakery wants to incorporate, it's deciding what to do, it wants to incorporate a sustainable practice. So it looks at its operations and processes and narrows it down to their packaging. And it decides to transition to using compostable packaging for its baked goods. So next we have translate to impact, where you'll want to connect the actions that you've identified to tangible community or economic outcomes. So this is where you want to describe a real world impact that people can understand. That's the main thing. You want this impact that people can understand, connect to, and relate to. So essentially, a choice that you made to clean up your operations is having a clear environmental or social result. So that takes us back to the NYU research, which I mentioned earlier, where adding in this messaging will increase and boost brand or product appeal by 23%. And we definitely want that 23%. So you don't want to avoid big descriptions. Not like right here with like we prioritize sustainable sourcing and just leave it at that. You want it to be detailed, accurate, honest, transparent. So something better would be we work with a local farm. So most of our ingredients come from just 15 miles away instead of 1,000 miles away. So, the local farm, the transparency around most of our ingredients, not all, most, the specific numbers around 15 miles away instead of 1,000 miles away, those things add value. So in our running example, we have the local bakery again. The local bakery's decision to clean up its operations by focusing on its packaging and switching its packaging to compostable packaging has reduced their plastic waste by 80%. Or let's say all the drinks at the bakery were served in refillable packaging, so it now reduces single-use packaging waste by 65%, whatever those numbers may be. But either way, the change to compostable packaging has now created a distinct positive environmental outcome, reduced plastic waste by 80%. So for gather the proof, you want to show evidence that your sustainability claim is real and grounded. This is the hard evidence, the photos, the receipts, the testimonials that you can put on your website, in your presentations, the data snapshots, and even other forms as well for different situations. So you can use descriptions that show um, consistency of the practice. So what I'm saying is that if you have a certain situation where like hard numbers aren't as clear or the technical language isn't necessarily there, you can still show consistency of the practice, just like in the last example. Um, every week we use a local farm or every house in the neighborhood has this type of relation to it. Something about showing how your consistent practice has built up an impact over time. And you can also use specific numbers, names of actual partners, the names of the farm, the names of the supply, certain things that show concrete evidence. And in our example, the bakery obtained a certification from a reputable environmental organization and received positive testimonials from customers. Okay, so for the next chunk, storytelling. So we're back to our friend. In this section, we're looking to organize and present what we have in a way that makes others believe it, care about it, and connect to it. So, essentially, before we didn't have any information at all, but now we have, we have the data, we have the things we want to say. But if it's unorganized, if it's too confusing for your audience to listen to, they won't stick around. So our idea here in this next section is to organize and present what we have so others again can believe it, care about it, resonate with it, connect to it. So this takes us to step 4 of the framework, adapt for audience. So up to this point, we're halfway done. We have our base story through our data collection, and we now just need to adapt it for whoever's listening. So here we are back again on this diagram where this diagram on all the communicating that's happening. And remember, we're going to develop the base story based on who we're talking to show them, whichever audience it is, how what we're doing, the practices that we've incorporated, how it benefits them, right? Because, essentially you're running a business. You want them to give you money or partnership or whatever else. In order for them to do that, you need to show and tell them how what you're doing benefits them. It's not just, oh, look, I care about the earth. I want to be eco-friendly. It's because you can anticipate a response to vague language or language that focuses more on what you do as opposed to how it benefits them. You can anticipate a response being, okay, so what? So under adapt for audience, there are 3 key considerations for what we need to say to different audiences. So we want to consider who we're talking to, which would be to qualify your audience. We want to consider what we're going to say, which would come from, if we're serious about the quality of our brand messaging, it will come from your brand foundation, which I'll get into. And finally, we're going to consider how we need to say it, which focuses on strong writing and storytelling techniques. So qualifying your audience means to confirm you're talking to the right person by making sure that they are actually interested in what you're selling. You do this by being specific about who you see as your ideal buyer of your product. That's being specific about their demographics, their values, their fears, and desires. And so this is a key area where you really want to flesh out the details around your ideal audience, your target buyer, your target audience. So you want to consider the fears and desires that might motivate someone to see how your product is the solution. And you could do that by listing out the desires a product or service satisfies, then focus on the most powerful one. And if you remember from earlier, once you focus on that most powerful desire or the most powerful fear surrounding what you do, you tell them how what you do benefits them, how what you do will satisfy that desire or satisfy that or quell that fear. You also want to ask what are their pain points, which is just the doubts, the concerns, the objections that they're going to bring up as they consider your product. So how would they push back on what you're saying? Again, imagine someone is constantly asking you, why? So once we're specific about the ideal buyer, the person who is most likely to want this product, we can deduce from that that if a customer is interested in your product, they'll probably also be interested in how you go about producing it, especially if there is a benefit to them that they're not aware of. And that benefit could just be, somehow reaffirming the values that they have for themselves. And so again, you're here to tell them how your sustainability practice benefits them. And another tactic is to focus on the customers who did complete purchases, who have been long-term participants in your business because they've confirmed that they will finish the job. So it would be useful to find out what they all have in common, their needs and their pain points. And you want to know, what do your happy customers say they like about what you do? What do they say about what they care about with respect to sustainability? And this again goes back to data collecting around your happy customers. And that could be surveys, direct questions. But they can provide a lot of information for you about how to speak about the sustainability practices that you incorporate or intend to incorporate, and how it will be received well by them. So as you're developing your profile, keep in mind your profile of the ideal buyer. Keep in mind that that person, that decision maker wants to know, are you going to fix a problem of theirs? Um, are you going to help me achieve a goal or a dream? Can you save me time or money? Do you align with my values and my vision for my life, for my family, for my community, whatever? Do you offer value that I'm looking for? And in the B2B context, are you going to lower my risk? Meaning, if I'm using you as a vendor and you're using sustainable practices in your businesses, then I will have less of a risk with respect to maybe my own reporting obligations or my own target metrics or other things like that. So, if those last questions might feel heavy or intimidating, it might be because your brand foundation is a bit shaky or a bit underdeveloped. So, this is an important point. This can be the case. You can have an underdeveloped brand foundation even if you have already seen success in your business. So, in order to get solid messaging in place, we want to make sure it's coming from a grounded place, a solid, built out foundation. Okay. And here is that foundation, your brand strategy, your brand development. It starts with your brand's purpose, which is made up of your brand's values, mission, and vision. Your values are the standards you use to decide what's right or wrong for your business. Your mission is what you do every day, who you serve, and how you serve them. Your vision is where you're trying to go, the change you want to help create over time. You then pinpoint your value proposition, which is and again, this is, of course, a quick overview, but these are things that it's important to take the time to develop these elements. But your value proposition is what makes you different, special, and the one to choose. Then you would look at your playing field, essentially analyzing the market, what's changing in your market, what your customers are hearing about already, what your competitors are doing, and where your business naturally fits into that conversation. So I have a quick example here, um, speaking about brand foundation. So this is a salon that hasn't developed their brand foundation. They make a statement. It's essentially, it doesn't really hit. It doesn't really do the job. So, business statement, we use solar panels in our salons. Again, anticipating that response. Why? Or oh, okay, that's great. If I don't know anything about what that means, I may not engage more. Um, the business may respond in a vague way, but because it's better for the earth. The customer is like, all right, you haven't really like stood out to me in any type of way. So the business goes and does their homework, right? They go and think about their brand foundation. They actually develop these core elements. So they identify that their values, the values that they want to follow for their brand, health, responsibility, being environmentally friendly. Their mission is to deliver beauty services in a lower impact way. Their vision is beauty, the a beauty industry that doesn't cause excessive environmental harm, maybe over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be. And their value proposition is they provide responsible beauty and care without lifestyle sacrifice. So now with these elements identified and developed, you'll be able to tell your stories with direction and constantly bringing your audience back to your brand's foundational values. And so that's the idea here. We're trying to build out a foundation that you always draw from. You always come back to this core, this center of your communication system that you're building out. So because you're constantly drawing from this message, from this core messaging, you'll slowly and steadily grow the trust and understanding that you have from your target audience. Because the idea is that you keep saying things. It doesn't matter where they see you, if it's on social media, on your website, in person, at an event, in presentations and pitches, wherever it may be, whenever they see and hear from you, all of your messaging is anchored in the same place. So the hair salon starts over, tries again. Hair salon, there's an example message, again, just high level. Hair salons use a significant amount of energy every day from dryers, lighting, hot water, and equipment. Our brand is built around making hair care healthier for both our clients and the environment. That's coming in from the mission. By switching to solar power, we reduce the energy impact of every appointment. That's impact statement. Now clients can do their part to help the environment without changing their hair routine. That's their value proposition. So they're really able to um, hit at these core elements that they've identified in themselves and in their target audience, and so they can speak directly to it. And the brand owner here could even go even further by, including a personal story about what sparked the realization that she wanted to do this, what made her, what's her own reason for doing this. That would make it even more personalized and resonate even further. So that full picture approach, that we just discussed with the brand foundation of how you operate, what you stand for, how you communicate it, all of that is your brand strategy. And so when these elements are in solid place, they form the core of all your communications for the brand. And it will then, this is another benefit from it all, it will then be easier for you to break off and repurpose those elements for, again, social, whatever grant applications, whatever it may be, media statements, website pitches. You can break off and create these other content deliverables in a sense while keeping everything cohesive. Now we reach the third consideration when adapting to our audience, which is the writing and storytelling techniques. Okay, so classes, this is class time right now. When writing on behalf of your brand in any scenario, you must follow the principle that good writing is clear and simple, no matter how complicated the topic, no matter how technical. When explaining in your writing, sometimes when we just want to get the job done, we just want to hurry up and write the website and just be done with it. We want to deliver information like this. The first sentence will bring up point A, which leads to point B. And then sentence 2 is point C, leads to point D. And then sentence 3 is point E, leads to point F. And an example of that format would be something kind of more generic, like we use solar energy in our salon. Customers today care about sustainability. Solar reduces emissions, therefore you should choose us. So it's coherent. Um, and sometimes you can see this in certain people, in websites that you see and other things like that. It's coherent, it's simple, but it's choppy and it doesn't really, again, you're trying to strike a chord, you're trying to really connect with your reader, with your audience. It's not really doing that. So now we focus on strong writing, and the writing that you should be using going forward, especially as you try to incorporate this sustainability messaging, is writing that holds the reader's hand through the writing until the message is done, until you really land it. So you don't want to lose your reader. In this format, it would be sentence one, point A leads to point B. Sentence two, you revisit or you touch base with point B, leads to point C. Sentence three, revisit point touch on point C, leads to point D. So this idea is more connective. It flows a bit better. It just is something where you're holding on to your reader, to your audience as you move along. So here, an example, hair salons use a lot of electricity every day, dryers, lighting, hot water, and equipment. Because of that, traditional salons create a large energy footprint. That's why we switch to solar power. So when you choose our salon, you're choosing a lower impact beauty service. And again, when you're reading that, um, even though it's a simple example, you can still get the idea that uh, a more connective, kind of linked messaging, you feel safe. You feel, as a reader, you feel like you can tell that the writer has catered to your understanding. And because you can understand, you want to keep reading, you want to keep scrolling, you want to stay on the website. You haven't lost me. So I want to stay and hear more of what you have to say. So the idea is that your reader shouldn't have to do any work to understand why you matter. Your writing and your messaging should do that work for them. And here's the version for B2B. And again, when we just, this is when you just want to hurry up, you want to finish the writing, you want to post it, you want to get done with your website, you're just trying to get done with, you want to turn in the application, you don't care. Um, we operate using solar energy. Many companies have sustainability goals. Since solar energy is renewable, we would be a strong vendor partner. And of course, simplified, I know you guys don't write like this, but it's just a general idea. And the stronger version would be companies are increasingly tracking supply chain emissions. Vendor energy use contributes to those emissions. We transitioned our operations to solar to lower our energy-related emissions. That allows partners working with us to support their sustainability targets through vendor selection. So more power, more force, more resonance, more understanding. So essentially what we've been talking about is copywriting, which is writing persuasive text for advertising and marketing material. This forms the backbone of your storytelling because this is a business and we want them to buy, partner, sign up, click, subscribe, whatever. The idea with copywriting, when you're writing copy, the purpose of this sentence is to get the reader to want to read the next sentence. And the purpose of this sentence is to make the reader want to read the next sentence and on and so forth. Again, connecting to that idea of leading the reader down to that final place, which is the call to action, which is basically a directive that makes it clear what you want the reader to do next. Click, subscribe, enroll, schedule a call, download something, whatever it may be. So we have strong writing and messaging. Who do we take it to? Is the next question. You remember spending time developing that profile of the ideal buyer. So we're going back to that again, where you want to use detail and the pain points. You want to really bring up the pain points so that we can show that we truly understand their problems and desires and that we are the right solution for them. So We're going to use detailed data information that the reader can easily determine if we're going to use enough of it so that the reader or audience, whatever listener can easily determine if they're in the right place and can make a qualified decision on whether to stay on your content. And you don't have to be afraid of being specific because if you're trying to talk to everybody, you're trying to talk to nobody. You have to be specific about who you're trying to target in your messaging. So here we'll split into, we're just going to, for the audience section, we'll just talk about in two main buckets, the B2C versus B2B. For B2C, we want to focus on their values. We want to show how they value sustainability and that aligns with us. And of course, there's different, that branches out into other aspects and elements of that. But essentially, that's one of the ideas you can move forward with is that you want to show how your values align with your consumers. And for B2B, the idea is that our efforts, the sustainable practices that you've incorporated will help them reach their goals. And that again goes back to the data collecting, the show them that we have, we'll show them that we have proof of how we can lower their risk, how I can improve your positioning. Because of these practices that I've incorporated, when you partner with me, I can help save you money because of the lower cost, the more cost effective way that I've gone about my operations. And another storytelling technique is to leverage values and emotions. So customers and partners who value sustainability will value authenticity. They want to know that their participation in the sustainability space is actually making a difference. And they want to know the truth about your efforts there as well and what drove you to participate. So in this space, your passion and your values, they can speak pretty loudly because that's what brings both parties together, the appreciation for sustainability principles. And you can ask yourself, what emotions do you want them to feel as they're encountering your stories, your messaging, your website content, whatever? What emotions do you want them to feel? And a good lead-in for this, when you're thinking about it, is what were the emotions that made you care about this? Because your storytelling, often the kind that will have the strongest resonance is the one that taps into the emotions that you also had. So your storytelling should evoke those same emotions. And if someone's coming to you for a product or service, it's probably it's because they see you as the one who can solve their problem. They trust you to lead them to a solution. So if you say you care about X in relation to that problem, um, they'll want to listen. They'll trust you. They they know that if you were able to solve this one thing for me, then you probably know something else too, right? So that's X in that respect. And so you should, because of that trust relationship, you should feel comfortable enough to share what you genuinely care about and how it it makes you passionate about this space. And again, because we're running a business, after you've activated them, after you've activated the values and the emotions and use the techniques, you end with the CTA, a call to action, to get them to take the action you need for that piece of content or writing. Okay, and finally, a few things that have been let me say the title, What to Avoid as a Sustainability Storyteller. A few things that have been flagged in sustainability messaging as companies have tried to essentially get the benefits of promoting sustainability without taking the actual steps to accurately and honestly incorporate it into their business. So, greenwashing, that's the trend of making unsubstantiated or exaggerated claims about environmental practices. You want to avoid vague language, using terms like natural or green without clear definitions and actual precision about what you're doing. You want to avoid the lack of transparency. like failing to disclose the full scope of sustainability efforts or your shortcomings. So that would be like highlighting a minor green initiative, or you could be cherry picking your positive data while ignoring the less positive impacts or non-sustainable approaches, meaning that you're not really giving the full picture of your practice. And it could also be like omitting the negative impacts, which essentially just like presents everything in a skewed way. And finally, overlooking the supply chain impact. So you could be making all these strides to improve your footprint, but the suppliers you use, do the exact opposite. And so someone who is supporting you, they're not really getting the benefit that you're claiming that they're getting. Here we are at the end. This is back to the local bakery who switched to the compostable packaging. Now we're applying the final step of the framework, adapt for the audience. And we're going to use those two categories, B2C and B2B, for B2C, focusing on their values. Here it could be that they value, it's a local bakery, so they could be valuing convenience, but also, so they want to be able to do two things at once. They're grabbing their morning coffee, they're on the go. Um, so the messaging could be, we moved to compostable packaging for our pastries so customers can reduce plastic waste just by choosing where they buy their coffee and breakfast. So really highlighting how, because you pinpointed that value, you can really tailor your messaging to something that you have directly pinpointed by your own research and profile building for your target audience. And for B2B, focusing on how your practice, your business can support their goals. An example message would be, we transitioned our takeaway packaging to certified compostable materials and reduced plastic packaging volume across our product line, which supports waste reduction targets for corporate catering and retail partners. So again, the terms like certified, uh, getting quantifying the impact, reduced packaging volume across our product line, um, supporting reduction targets. So really being specific and about those data points, but then also making sure that you deliver it in a way that shows how it benefits them. So in summary, just to recap, strong messaging around your sustainable practices can significantly boost appeal. It's worth it to say something about the impact that you're making. You can start by asking yourself, why do I care? What made me start to care about this? And that's a good way to start, because if it moved you, it will likely move your customer, and you can trust yourself enough to know that if it's important to you, then and it'll be important to them too. You just have to flesh out the story. And again, the diagram about thinking about all the audiences you have to talk to, these are all separate audiences. You want to tailor your messaging to each one based off of the values, the fears, the desires, the pain points, the objections that you have identified or you're gathering over time about each of these groups, and then speaking to each of them based on it. Then again, our overall framework, data collecting, storytelling, the first step, identifying the practice, looking at what you already do, looking at your current operations, breaking down the elements and figuring out where is a good entry point based on it. To translate to impact, identify that statement that really said that encapsulates what that change that you've identified, what it does, the positive environmental or community impact. And then frame the proof. That's you want to get the evidence, because people have to see that evidence. And it also feeds into the story that you can build out, because you have stuff on your plate, you have content that you can use to craft different stories. And then finally, the step 4, adapting for your audience. You want to, back to that big circle, you're thinking of all the different groups. First, you want to qualify your audience. You want to build out that detailed ideal profile with the pain points again, with all those things, rooting what you say in your brand, in your developed brand foundation, so it's cohesive across your content, across your writing, across your speaking. And then third, your writing and storytelling techniques, which starts with strong, clear writing, leveraging emotions and values, really painting the picture with detail around their fears, their desires, and then addressing them, addressing the strongest ones especially, and then avoiding vague, inconsistent, or greenwashing language in your messaging. And with all that, you'll be able to, you definitely get a wonderful, a strong start to strengthening your messaging and your storytelling around your sustainability practices, whatever they may be. All right. I'm definitely would love to